The human mind is one of the most complex things that we know about, and the thoughts and ideas of key players in history have defined the path humanity has followed. The human mind will continuously seek information to expand our knowledge and sharpen our minds. And, as important as information may be, some things are best not learning about. Cognitohazards and infohazards are similar but not exactly the same, as cognitohazards are external stimuli that can cause harm to those who observe it, while infohazards are information that can cause harm just by knowing it. So kind of in this regard, an infohazard could be a cognitohazard, but the other way around doesn't have to be exactly the same. From minuscule inconveniences that you won't remember in 5 minutes, to mind-wrapping concepts that can leave a person forever changed, cognitohazards and infohazards are a result of humanity's desire to learn everything, like a child wishing to explore a forest, only to come face to face with the wolves that live within it. And today, we're going to wander into that deep forest, but not alone, as we explore the Cognitohazard and Infohazard Iceberg, where we will discuss many examples of infohazards and cognitohazards. Now, as we are going to explore concepts designed to be unsettling to learn about, then you might want to sit out on this iceberg. Obvious cognitohazard and infohazard, a warning that kind of comes with the territory of the video. But if you choose to sit through this iceberg with me, those brave or foolish enough to continue, let us continue as I, who have absorbed all of these cognito and info hazards, will spread them on to you. So, without further ado, let's get into the iceberg. And to start off the iceberg, we have spoilers. Spoilers are one of the most common forms of infohazards. All of us have been spoiled on a movie or a series we were interested in, and it can be frustrating, especially if you're really invested in that story. This is a much more innocent form of information that a person wouldn't want to know, especially without knowing the plot points that led up to that moment get pretty much ruined, leaving the viewer upset that they couldn't witness the plot point occur naturally. Now, I'm going to put a little spoiler warning here, but one of the largest spoilers in history is Darth Vader revealing that he was Luke Skywalker's father in Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back. The plot point was a massive revelation in the second movie, and to some people who watched the movie, they just couldn't keep their mouth shut about it. In fact, even Vader's body actor, David Prowse, spoiled the revelation when talking to the press. And this was a huge spoiler back then. And pretty much everyone knows about Vader being Luke's father now. But back then, to get to that point without getting spoiled was truly hard to do, and it was a shocker once you found out back then. And even to this day, still spoilers persist with social media's ability to spread information easily. The game is a mind game that is played with the objective of not thinking about the game. When a player thinks about the game, they must announce that they lost the game verbally, causing other players nearby to lose. When a player loses, they must wait 30 minutes to play again. The game is a classic example of a cognitohazard, given how impossible the game is to win. So impossible, you can't really plan on winning it because that requires you thinking about the game. I wonder how many viewers now remember playing the game. Couldn't imagine that realization to you being made, that you're winning the game for all this time because you hadn't thought about it. But here I am, in this random iceberg video, I just cost you the game. I'm pretty sure everyone here is familiar with the placebo effect, where positive effects can occur from belief in treatment that normally would do nothing. However, many might not know about its evil twin, the nocebo effect. The nocebo effect occurs when negative thoughts are attributed to a treatment, causing something negative to happen when usually nothing would happen. Nocebo can usually occur when a person is either told or already is doubtful of a treatment and thinks that it will not work and will have negative side effects. And the effect has caused many people to fall ill or worsen their pre-existing conditions. Pessimistic thoughts and a lack of faith in treatment that has been very prevalent in the past few years can cause more nocebos to occur, even turning perfectly healthy people sick with nothing more than a negative outlook. Philosophy is usually something that people wish to expand their views on. However, certain philosophies can trigger negative side effects in certain people. Certain philosophical questions can cause existential dread and extreme negative outlooks on life. Nihilism is a philosophy that views everything as meaningless, removing value from core aspects of life. And although many nihilists will tell you this isn't really a pessimistic view on the world, it's more of kind of like just a way of thinking of things that's slightly different. It's not necessarily emo. Some people definitely can take it to that degree. And many philosophical questions can lead people to come to many grim answers. And we're going to explore many of those questions, so buckle up. Traumatizing imagery such as gore images or other forms of shock images can leave dark effects on people who view them. Most of us probably remember the first time seeing a gruesome video or image that just mortifies you and sticks with you for a while. And although I'd like to think that everyone could get over these shocking forms of media, some people remain genuinely scarred after witnessing something so awful for the first time. Traumatizing imagery has always existed throughout history, with many paintings that result in the painter or the viewer being greatly disturbed or causing them to do something truly tragic. Some people even go out of their way to make shock videos on the internet that kind of start innocent but then cut to something awful on purpose. And due to the lax policy of enforcement following Elon Musk's purchase of Twitter, many people have been caught with many gore videos for the first time, and yeah, it's not really a good thing to happen. And many more shock videos will continue to occur as it's kind of integral to the internet. Shock videos and shock imagery has always kind of been a thing. But yeah, unfortunately, I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon. Everyone gets songs stuck in their head from time to time. You may catch yourself humming a song or singing its lyrics at random. Much can go into an earworm developing, such as how often you hear a song, how catchy it is, and even things such as emotions or associations with otherwise unrelated factors. You may get a song stuck in your head because it plays on the radio often when you're on the road, or if your friend plays a song often when you're around them. To some people, getting a song stuck in your head can be disturbing because you just can't stop thinking about it. It doesn't disturb me because I only listen to straight up bangers, but maybe you could get a bad song stuck in your head. And sometimes earworms can form if you hear a part of a song that you find catchy, but not the whole thing. So in order to get rid of earworms in this case, it's best to find that song and listen to it the whole way through. And a pretty common way of getting rid of earworms is to just continuously listen to a song until you get it filtered out, or find a new song that you like to replace it. Now, that rhythm that you had stuck in your head, you just can't stop thinking about, now became a new addition to your playlist. Paradoxes by their very nature are confusing and potentially unsettling. We like to think we know everything about the world around us, but every time we think we know it all, something comes along just leaving us scratching our heads looking stupid. Many paradoxes leave us to think how these discrepancies occur, with one example of these discrepancies being the Fermi paradox. A simple question that asks why we cannot communicate with spacefaring civilizations can result in grim conclusions, like us being alone, or that life was all wiped out, except us. If you want to learn more about this Fermi paradox, go ahead and watch my video on it, where we explore the Fermi Paradox Iceberg and talk about all sorts of solutions to the paradox. Memes can often have a similar effect to earworms. Many of us just can't get a certain meme out of our heads. I feel this was more of a thing back when Vine was a thing due to the short-term nature of Vines, with frequent variations of memes being used in a lot of these Vines. Sometimes unrelated conversation can cause a person to think about a meme with our brain's super complicated pattern recognition being used to remember these nuts or 21 kid. Some memes can trigger earworms due to parts of songs playing in the meme, sometimes even resulting in a double whammy of a meme and an earworm getting stuck in your head at the same time. Smile.jpg is the name of a file in the classic creepypasta Smile Dog. The premise of the creepypasta is a picture of a smiling husky that tells the recipient of the photo to send it to other people. If they fail to send it to other people within 3 days, the file begins to distort, with the photo growing more sinister, while the victim has more unhinged thoughts. The story is a classic creepypasta and also a prime example of a fictional super cognitohazard. The nature of the story itself may even scare the reader, as I know it spooked me when I was a kid, making it somewhat of a cognitohazard by being a story about a cognitohazard, albeit a far lesser one than demon dogs seeking global domination. Now to start off tier 2 of the iceberg, we have intrusive thoughts. Many of us have had dark thoughts at some point. Thoughts of causing harm to yourself or others, such as grabbing the steering wheel while driving or hitting somebody. From time to time, these thoughts might occur. These thoughts may cause distress even thinking about doing something so wrong, making them cognitohazards. These thoughts are normal to occur, actually, and feeling bad about these thoughts shows that you have empathy for others and self-worth regarding self-harm thoughts. So long as you don't act on these thoughts, they'll occur less often and you should be fine. If you do have constant thoughts of harming yourself or others, it is important to seek help. Mental health is not something to be ignored. Egg theory is a theory that stems from a story titled The Egg, written by Andy Weir, where the main character is told that they're the amalgamation of all of humanity and that everyone else is merely a separate reincarnation of them, who will live for the eyes of everyone to ever live, making every act towards another person, be it an act of kindness or aggression, an act towards yourself. This theory serves as an infohazard, as it can cause existential crises if this theory is to be taken literally. Both classified documents and nuclear codes can be lumped into the same section, as they're both infohazards for the same reason. Most classified information probably isn't significant, mainly just being names of agents that you will never know or fighter jets that you will never see fly. Some classified information could change the way you view the government, groups of people, organizations, or the world as a whole. The main aspect that makes them infohazards is the fear that sinks in once you realize that the government knows that you have launch codes or an alien's docs. Having this information could put everyone you know in danger, as the government will do whatever it can to get their hands on you. Another scary aspect of these topics is if somebody evil and capable of making use of this information gets their hands on them. If a rogue agent or a real-life supervillain could access secrets regarding the function of the government or superweapons, it could trigger incidents that could leave humanity in shambles. This entry refers to a diagram from a medical website, which is what I'm showing right now. This is not a self-harm guide, that was edited to share as a, self-harm guide that tells you that if you're bored, here's a way to break your thumb ligament. The simple promise of destroying your thumb ligament in a short move creates quite the infohazard. However, looking into the diagram can thoroughly debunk this claim that the caption promises. The original diagram is actually a test known as the Finkelstein test, a test used to diagnose de Quervain tendinitis, a form of tendinitis that affects the thumb side of the wrist. If a sharp pain is felt while replicating this test, then it's actually a sign that you might have this tendinitis. The diagram is displaying a scenario where the patient is experiencing pain from the tendinitis and not their thumb ligament being broken. And I mean, hell, just doing this might actually show that you have this form of tendinitis. And usually the pain attributed to people doing this is a result of them doing it frequently and at a fast speed, which is not how you are supposed to do this. When going about life, things such as blinking and breathing are performed without thinking about it. Unless you're playing sports or something, you're not going to focus on your breath that often. But either when somebody says you are now blinking or you are breathing manually, or just randomly thinking about breathing or blinking, you could start to manually breathe and blink. This entry annoyed the hell out of me and is annoying me right now because I have to view these phrases several times, triggering me to blink repeatedly and breathe controlledly, which this is so annoying. So, as a side effect, this Infohazard has caused me the most annoyance in this iceberg, by far. Manual breathing isn't a problem, for me, because I'm used to, like, sports and stuff like that where you're supposed to, but the blinking part gets me so badly. I just blink, like, several times when I see the phrase. The phrase causing you to think and overcomplicate subconscious actions can give that kind of feeling, like waking up behind the wheel. I'm kind of confused why this entry is a tier over Pascal's wager, as I think it's pretty important to talk about when talking about this, but I think it's a big enough entry to cover on its own beforehand. Most people hold beliefs in their faith, but countless faiths exist, with each of them having the same likelihood of being the correct religion. This entry claims that simply knowing about other faiths makes you a disbeliever to them. So, in the case that other faith is the correct one, then you cannot claim to have not known about that faith when confronted by whatever deity in the afterlife. You are not a believer. Many faiths punish non-believers in the afterlife, so this would make even knowing about other religions an Infohazard. And to start tier 3 of the iceberg, you are conscious. To some people, the concept of merely being conscious is scary. The fact that you, I, and everyone else lives in this one world, and we are each in control of our own person. Discussion around consciousness has been talked about for thousands of years, with many theories involving consciousness being created. The fact that we create convincing dream worlds in our unconscious minds adds another layer of complexity to this, which really asks us, what is the real world? Many find the whole subject of consciousness overwhelming, even giving similar effect to that entry about breathing and blinking, where, oh my god, it caused me to blink again, where it's something that is automatic and not really thought about, but suddenly is a shock to you when you sit down and really think about the gravitas of all of it. Now, this entry calls back to the Intrusive Thoughts entry and kind of goes back to our previous entry on consciousness, and a lot of entries in this iceberg call back to pre-existing entries, so there's kind of a thread within this iceberg. Even though there are consequences behind your actions, any action that you are capable of physically doing can be achieved. To most people, this can be motivational than anything and usually is used as motivation. However, when thought about in a more pessimistic light, this realization can have a more sinister implication. This realization can serve as an Infohazard to those who are more evil or unhinged, especially to people who act on their darkest thoughts. A misperception of this can also leave people injured or even dead if somebody does something they cannot actually do, like a stunt or a failed bench press, for example. And never bench alone, especially not without spotter arms. Now, this entry refers to an installment from the goated analog horror series Local 58. In the video, there were sleep exercises that promise a sleep without dreams, but quickly reveals its intentions of removing sleep entirely from the viewer's mind. The in-universe sleep test is a dangerous cognitohazard that can cause dreamless sleep sleeplessness entirely, and a deconstruction of the brain's facial recognition abilities. Definitely recommend watching Local 58 if you haven't. I had to watch this again for the video, and I really do like it. It's still a banger. Now, this entry is somewhat of a joke entry, but it's kind of interesting to think about, as photosensitive epilepsy is a condition where flashing lights or contrasting patterns of differing brightness can trigger seizures in people who have the condition. So in this case, the lights would be a cognitohazard to people with photosensitive epilepsy. Along with that episode of Pokemon that Porygon got banned from the anime for, despite Pikachu being the one that caused the explosion, resulting in the flashing lights, and not Porygon. Free my mans. As briefly mentioned before, Pascal's wager is a concept that was expanded on by French prodigy Blaise Pascal that argues that the afterlife is a gamble, but to the perspective of a Christian, believing in God is always the best option. If you believe in God and He exists, then you're a believer, and if you follow the faith, you go to heaven. And if you follow God and there is no afterlife, then you essentially just go into the void. You don't really lose anything. However, if you don't believe in God, then the best case scenario is the Christian's worst case scenario, and you go to your little boring white void afterlife. However, if you are a non-believer and God does exist, then you will be punished by being damned to hell. If you believe, you gain heaven. If you don't believe, you're damned to hell. The wager can be brought even higher when taking into account other faiths. Now, an interesting conclusion would be that if a person was to exist without ever finding out about God while being atheist, then knowing about God would be an infohazard if the person never believes in Him upon learning about Him, as this would be the only case where a non-believer would be allowed into heaven. Roko's Basilisk is my favorite Infohazard. A post made in 2010 on the Less Wrong discussion board from a poster known as Roko. The post tells of an AI super being akin to Am from I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream that seeks out to torture everybody who knew about it, with the exception of those who worked to create it. The twist of the thought experiment sinks in when you realize that I just told you about the Basilisk. So, just from me telling you about it, I have damned you to a fate of eternal torture. Or to work on the Basilisk and damn whoever knew about it to torture. I remember the first time I learned about the Roko's Basilisk, I was unfamiliar with the concept and of Infohazards really as a whole, and this is a great example one. And after being stun-locked by the complexity of the Basilisk in the thought experiment, I was just kind of sitting there like, oh, thanks for damning me to eternal torture. So now I can spread that reaction on to you. But don't worry, you can spread it on to someone else, making the Basilisk more powerful. Both infinity and nothingness, despite being opposite concept, hold one thing in common. We can understand both infinity and nothingness on a conceptual level, but if one was to be presented with infinity or nothingness, the human mind would break. Since the human mind cannot comprehend infinity or nothingness, it is a cognitohazard, as trying to think about it can drive you mad. And I remember when I was really sitting down and thinking about it, there'll be more entries in here that talk about it, including the next one. It kind of starts to give you a bit of like a headache. So like, yeah, it does pretty much that effect. And to spin off of the last entry, if the universe around us is finite, then what exists outside of the universe? If everything exists inside of it, then nothingness must surround the universe, right? And what even is nothingness? Like, try to think about it. It isn't just pure black or pure white. It isn't empty space. However, because black and white are shades, and emptiness is a quality that exists along with space, and nothingness is nothing. It's not even space. So, like, just thinking about it a little bit kind of like, makes you lightheaded. Like, what really is nothing? Like, it's so hard to think about. This entry stems from people interpreting depersonalizations where one feels detached from reality as if they were fake and interprets it literally. It all wraps back to consciousness, and many argued throughout history that if they're real or not. The famous quote, "I think, therefore I am," comes from French philosopher René Descartes to prove that since he could think, he existed. But not all people have reached this conclusion, and many may interpret everything as real except for the observer themselves. I think, yet I am not, per se. But thinking in such a way can lead to madness and even reinforce values of self-worth. So it could be a bad thing, but you could also kind of like observe it as the universe viewing itself and as like a natural process. So, I mean, there you go. Samantha's sanctuary is presented as a possible solution to the Roko's Basilisk thought experiment. One way of how to stop the Basilisk before it was created is to create a super AI with the purpose of stopping it. One may view Samantha's sanctuary as just an antivirus software that disables the Basilisk, but another interpretation is that it destroys those who aids in Basilisk's destruction. This kind of creates an AI Cold War where one side is seeking out the complete destruction of Roko. However, those who feel obligated to create Roko, or I guess the evil people, would be obligated to create it quicker and thwart Samantha's efforts. I like this solution because it creates a way to fight back against the Basilisk and punishes those who sought out to create it. However, a large amount of people worrying about the Basilisk will probably be doing it out of desperation and not know about Samantha, so I don't think Samantha will be sympathetic towards those people. This entry states that since your senses can be deceived, you cannot fully trust them. And since you cannot trust your senses, you cannot prove that anything is real. Everything can be a simulation or even a dream, as dreamscapes can be completely immersive to the dreamer into believing that everything within them is real. This realization can drive people mad and serves as an inverse of the earlier entry regarding yourself not existing. Instead, everything else might not exist. The despair code is a theorized kill switch that can trigger depression, schizophrenia, and even death just from a phrase. Originating on 4chan and drawing inspiration from H.P. Lovecraft, many describe the despair code as a hidden code that can manipulate a person's mental state like a command prompt and can be used by those who are in control to manipulate the masses. The phrase could also be explained as a manipulation of human pattern recognition that triggers a reaction of extreme depression. Later in this iceberg, there's a great example of a despair code, or a potential one at least, and they're meant to be extremely complex and not easy to just come across by mistake. That being said, how random modern meme culture is, somebody could accidentally end up putting out a despair code on a shitpost and turning a mechanism of humor into a stimuli of despair. And although I don't really think this entry counts as a Cognitohazard or an Infohazard, it's interesting to think about that even if God or any other deity or faith around the world is not real, the world was still shaped by its followers. Even a small yet vocal subset of atheists that take pride in not believing in anything are still being influenced by faith by rejecting it so vehemently. Cultures all over the world are shaped by their religious faiths, with a majority of all people being religious. The reason I think this is on the iceberg is that the idea of something not real having such a huge influence on human history and on people to this day might be a bit of a scary one. However, much good has come from religion, bad has also resulted from belief. But if nothing existed in the first place, much of that sacrifice may be interpreted in vain. But to tie it back to Pascal's wager, it's better to be safe than sorry. And down in the depths of Tier 4 of the iceberg, we have Virus 23. Virus 23 is an infohazard that supposedly transmits the same way a computer virus would. Just by saying or reading Virus 23 is enough to compromise the mind of the recipient. Within 5 letters and 2 numbers, there is a code that rewrites the human mind, leaving the victim unknowing that anything had changed. It is wild to think that a virus could be written within a phrase the same way a virus is placed within a file. This functions similarly to a despair code, not exactly as a despair code, as a despair code is kind of like a pre-existing code, like a command prompt, while Virus 23 hijacks the mind kind of like a virus, as stated in the name. A tulpa, also referred to as thought forms, is a concept that originated from Tibetan Buddhism, but has been explored on the internet and has been used in a lot of horror media. Tulpas are beings that are manifested by thought and concentration, usually explained as something like an imaginary friend. Tulpas have their own will and function separately from those who manifest them, so they're not exactly like a stand from JoJo's. Modern practitioners specializing in manifestation of tulpas, known as tulpamancers, consider tulpas as psychological entities rather than paranormal ones like ghosts, and hold a different belief in tulpas than those that Buddhist practitioners may. And the reason tulpas are on this iceberg from the fact that they can be manifested from negative thoughts, creating more wicked tulpas, and that tulpas can be corrupted or possessed by demonic entities using their power to infiltrate the tulpamancer as kind of a conduit. Belief is Key refers to SCP-2718. Cognitohazard from the SCP Foundation, and in-universe is one of the most secretive SCPs, with even reading about the logs regarding it constituting a containment breach. SCP-2718 is what happens after death, as told by reconstructed overseer Roger Sheldon. Upon death, the body retains all of its senses, and you are aware of everything that happens to your body. Even as you decompose, split away, you feel yourself even if you are scattered across the ocean. Holy, you are aware of everything, hopeless to do anything about it. The revelation was such a shock that one of the council members in charge of the Foundation even suggested that human death itself be listed as a Keter-class SCP, that there was an immediate response to erase the memories of everyone involved in the meeting. If you're not familiar with SCP, this is probably like a big flashbang. Basically, it's an organization that keeps a lot of supernatural entities in check, and a lot of the stories revolving SCPs are so, like, they're Cognitohazards and Infohazards, so they have to constantly wipe their own minds to keep sane. And this not only is one of the most disturbing afterlives presented, but on top of the dread that comes from learning about it, this has to be so horrifying for someone who lives in, a universe where this is the outcome, and it may even cause dread to think about it in a literal sense in our world. Solar Plexus Clown Gliders, which I will abbreviate to SPCG, is an example of a despair code stemming from an old email prank with an accompanying urban legend. According to the legend, simply hearing the random assortment of words, viewing the accompanying image, or both can cause hallucinations, psychological damage, or a demonic possession. Many theories exist guessing that SPCG may be, with some seeing it as a despair code, with others seeing it as a demonic entity that transmits similar to Virus 23 or Smile Dog. Some have even taken the name literally and see the entity as a jester-like demon that attacks the chakra points located in the solar plexus. SPCG is thought to originate from an old jump scare virus that was triggered suddenly and either used the image or a similar one to terrify the user. The legend was created to add another level of terror to those who are not tech savvy, spreading through emails sometimes containing the virus, the image, and the 4 random words thought to spread dread just from saying them. Solar Plexus Clown Gliders. What is out there? What can't we see? What don't we know? These three questions embody humanity's most primordial fears, the fear of the unknown. These questions tie back to the infinity and nothingness entry, but really they tie back to the entire iceberg, as we can understand that things exist beyond our immediate understanding, but we don't know for sure what is out there. People have always been afraid of what we cannot see, because behind that bush that our ancestors couldn't see past hid carnivores ready to pounce. Fear of the unknown is a human trait, immediately thinking of the most extreme possibilities, ready to eclipse what we know. After exploring so much of the world, glimpses into space, concepts we've learned, and inventions we created, there is still so much we don't know about. But as humans are afraid of what we do not know, we're also eager to learn more. Take a flashlight and shine it into the darkness. After all, within the uncharted jungles that explorers trudged through, there were fierce jaguars. There were also capybaras. And if it weren't for those willing to fend off the beasts and continue moving forward, we may have never known about the coconut doggies killing and within their own element. And that is going to do it for the Infohazards and Cognitohazards Iceberg. Now, this was a really fun one. I enjoyed doing this, but to address how long it's been since the last episode, last installment, a lot's kind of happened. Life got a little busy, but fear not, for I don't plan on going anywhere. Doing this iceberg shows that I still enjoy doing this, so even if I'm not able to make an iceberg video immediately, I'm still going to come back to it at some point. A lot more has just kind of happened, more stuff has popped up on the schedule, a lot less free time, but making this video was a lot of fun. I still had a lot of fun researching. Shout out to OP, absolute legend. They put mini exclamations on the entries in the initial thread of the iceberg, so that made research so much easier because I knew exactly what message they were trying to convey. So shout out to OP, absolute legend. Nobody really does that for icebergs, and that made it so good. But yeah, this was a lot of fun. And also, I want to put it here that some entries in here, you can think about a lot of these thoughts and be like, oh, well, this doesn't affect me that much. Well, the whole thing about Infohazards, Cognitohazards is that they can have negative effects. Not necessarily that they will all the time. Infohazards, are kind of more, immediate, though. But anyways, this video was a lot of fun to make. I hope that y'all enjoy it. I'm still here. It might be a little while till the next upload, but I will do more. I'm thinking I want to do more uploads around this length. I don't know how long this video is going to come out to. If I had to guess, half an hour, 45 minutes maybe. But, yeah, thank you all so much for watching. And, oh my god, thank you all for getting me to a K, bro. That is ridiculous. Even though I got demonetized, I still don't know exactly why I got demonetized. Day one, I made $1.70. But I don't know why I got demonetized, but hey, this is still fun, so I'm gonna keep doing it. But anyways, thank you all so much for watching. If you liked the video, go ahead, leave a like, subscribe, and I will be back in the next video. See you later, alligators!